and the claim I'm refuting is that video game addiction causes introverted behavior. And the subclaims were: video game addicts have unhealthy lifestyles, video game addicts neglect responsibilities, and video game addiction negatively affects how you behave. My response to this claim is that video game addiction is difficult to diagnose, and I will explain that by saying that unhealthy lifestyle symptoms are already there in the cases of video game addiction. Video games are social activities, and video games do not incite depression or aggression. There is no professional agreement on the status or nature of video game addiction. Contradictory studies and reports have been published, and there has not yet been an accepted official diagnosis of the condition in the UK or North America. What can be agreed upon is there has not been suitable research on the subject. The socially propagated idea of video game addiction is causing problems on its own. Dr. Richard Wood at Nottingham Trent University says, some people are being mislabeled addicts by concerned parents, partners, or others when they have no problems with their game playing behavior. Some people who are concerned about their own behavior end up labeling themselves as video game addicts. First, I will address that video game addicts have unhealthy lifestyles. With unhealthy lifestyle symptoms are already there. Adolescents and young adults that are already coping with impulse control, social ineptitude, and lack of empathy are more likely to become excessive game players. Dr. Gentile, an associate professor at Iowa State University, says the teenagers who are experiencing problems may retreat into gaming, and the gaming may in turn increase their depression and isolation. The second point, video game addicts neglect responsibilities, is met with video games are social activities. Playing video games is not as socially isolating as many believe. Henry Jenkins, a professor at MIT, says much video game play is social. Almost 60% of frequent gamers play with friends, 33% play with siblings, and 25% with spouses or parents. The issue with studying gaming addiction is that many of them liken it with gambling, or in severe cases, drug dependency. There are people that have had very active social lives in gaming, and some studies don't even take into account that real people are involved. The third point, video game addiction negatively affects how you behave, is met with video games do not incite depression or aggression. Studies that attempt to link aggression to violent video games are inconclusive and have been criticized on methodological grounds. Many studies remove the media images from any narrative context, and subjects are asked to engage with content that they would not normally consume and may not understand. Henry Jenkins from MIT says, no research has found that video games are a primary factor or that violent video game play could turn an otherwise normal person into a killer. So in conclusion, I refuted video game addiction causes introverted behavior with video game addiction is difficult to diagnose, and unhealthy lifestyle symptoms are already there. Video games are social activities, and video games do not incite depression or aggression. Thank you.
What was the time?
3:20.
All right. All right, the structural things are fine. The setup at the beginning is fine. Your counterclaim is actually less of a claim. The first thing that you're starting with, then, it is a challenge to the definitional criteria. And I think you want to explain why it's important that there's not really a clear definition of what addiction is. Because that means that all the things that the advocate is presenting as being symptoms or consequences of addiction could result from a multiple variety of other sources, or they could be connected to something completely different, and as a consequence, the we're not even talking about the same issue. So I think you need a little bit more explanation about why that's important. The signposting on your claims, though, as you get to the main issues, are fine. I like the idea of the counterclaim on most of the points. You have counterclaims on most of the points that suggest that there's another explanation for the relationship between the symptoms or the events that are being observed and the relationship to video games. One is that they were already present, or that they produce not a counter effect, but they have the effect of actually creating socialization because people do these kinds of things with their friends and family. I thought all of those things were fine. I didn't think that there was very much analysis of the argument that the advocate presented. You're relying primarily on counterclaims, and I think that you've got good counterclaims, and your reasoning on the counterclaims is solid, but I'm not getting much opportunity to contrast it to the argument that was presented by the advocate. So at the end, it would be one of those situations where I'm going to be having to make the decision as to which point of view I believe a little bit more, and you want to be doing more of that comparison for me and giving me a justification for your position. All right, thank you.